Hey guys, blameitonjorge here, and this is the 2000 Childhood Trauma Iceberg. The 2000s was a wild time to be a kid. Home internet was brand new, mobile phones were just becoming a thing, and flash games ruled the school computer lab. This iceberg covers media from the decade that terrified children of the new millennium. Now, it's impossible to capture every single piece of film, television, game, internet video, or what have you that scared an entire generation. Feel free to let me know if I missed something, because I would actually love to make a part 2. Hell, even a 90s childhood trauma iceberg would be a lot of fun. I'm already looking at Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? Oh, and shoutouts to WinCon97, who also made a 2000s childhood trauma iceberg. He kinda beat me to the punch there, but it's a great video that definitely inspired me to tackle the subject myself, so let him know that I sent ya. Anyways, on to the iceberg.
Courage the Cowardly Dog. No list of 2000s childhood trauma is complete without Courage the Cowardly Dog. This show was meant to be nightmare fuel for kids who grew up in the new millennium. Airing from 1999 to 2002 on Cartoon Network, the show followed Courage, a timid pink dog living in the middle of nowhere, who protected his owners, Muriel and Eustace, from a constant barrage of supernatural threats. Despite being aimed at children, the show was infamous for its creepy tone, surreal visuals, and disturbing characters. Standout episodes like King Ramsay's Curse featured eerie CGI and ghostly chanting. Others, like Freaky Fred, pushed the envelope further with basically a hair-shaving predator. The Mask tackled serious topics like abuse and trauma, all under the guise of a cartoon.
Bloody Mary ritual. Every school bathroom in the 2000s came along with its own urban legend, and Bloody Mary was the queen of them all. The ritual was simple: turn off the lights, stand in front of a mirror, and chant Bloody Mary 3 times. Supposedly, a ghostly woman would appear in the reflection. Sometimes she screamed, sometimes she scratched her face, and sometimes she dragged you into the mirror. No one really knew where the legend came from, but kids continued to dare each other to try it, usually during sleepovers or right before recess. The point wasn't to see something, it was to prove you weren't a coward. Thankfully, it isn't real, but that didn't stop you from hesitating at the third Bloody Mary. Samara from The Ring. The Ring came out in 2002 and traumatized an entire generation. The plot was terrifying but straightforward: a cursed videotape that kills you 7 days after you watch it. The ghost responsible was Samara, a pale, long-haired girl with a blank stare and jerky movements that felt just wrong in every way. What made it worse was how believable it felt at the time. The grainy tape, the phone call, the idea that just watching something could doom you. It played directly into the anxiety of kids growing up with VHS tapes, sleepovers, and no real understanding of how horror movies worked. Years later, the imagery still sticks in the heads of any child that was unfortunate enough to see The Ring.
Teletubbies. On the surface, Teletubbies seemed harmless. 4 colorful babbling creatures, giggling and eating tubby custard. However, for many 2000s kids, this show felt deeply wrong. Aimed at toddlers, it aired on PBS and the BBC, featuring Tinky Winky, Dipsy, Lala, and Poe, in a bizarre, isolated world called the Tubbytronic Superdome. The sun had a baby's face, the vacuum cleaner was alive, and the entire show ran on a loop of echoing voices and hypnotic repetition. But nothing scared children quite like The Lion and the Bear. It was a sketch that aired within several episodes, featuring crudely animated cardboard cutouts of a lion and a bear, sliding across the screen with unsettling music and distorted voiceovers.
Where's the bear?
It was meant to be silly, but became nightmare fuel for many.
Before the movie even started, this sound already had you panicking. The THX logo, known as the Deep Note, played before tons of VHS tapes and theatrical releases in the 2000s. It was a pretty simple animation and sound. A quiet hum that slowly starts swelling into a deafening, almost alien-sounding chord paired with the THX logo. And for a generation of kids, this genuinely felt like a horror movie intro. There was nothing malicious about it. THX was just a sound certification company founded by George Lucas. The Deep Note was meant to test the full range of a theater's audio system, but for children of the time, it felt more like a warning siren than a quality check. That entire forums and memes are dedicated to people reliving the fear. Like, I genuinely remember thinking the theater was going to explode every time I would hear this. My personal theory behind this is that since the sound was obviously designed by adults, that when children heard the sound that hadn't experienced hearing loss like adults typically have, had their ears completely rocked by a sound like this.
Drug PSAs. Throughout the 2000s, anti-drug campaigns flooded the airwaves with terrifying imagery and guilt-inducing messages. The most infamous was the Partnership for a Drug-Free America series. One featured a girl literally deflating on the couch after smoking weed. Another had a kid shoot himself because he was just that high. Then there was This Is Your Brain on Drugs, featuring a calm voice cracking an egg into a frying pan. One standout was the Talking Dog PSA, where a girl's dog tells her he misses how she used to be before she started using drugs. It was creepy, sad, and weirdly effective. All of them aired during daytime TV, often unskippable, and always way too intense for a kid just trying to watch SpongeBob.
If you were online in the 2000s, chances are you fell for this one. The Scary Maze game looked like a simple challenge. Guide a dot through a narrow maze without touching the walls. But right when the player's concentration peaked, a terrifying image of Reagan from The Exorcist would pop up on screen, accompanied by a blood-curdling scream. It wasn't just a simple prank, it was a whole genre of videos. These were called screamers. They were meant to look like nonchalant videos that would jump scare unexpecting viewers. Classic examples include the KFC car commercial, where a car coasts peacefully down a hill before a zombie face jumps out, and the ghost chair video, which loops for minutes before screaming directly into your soul. These screamers spread fast. Kids would pass them around in computer labs, reaction videos were everywhere, and if you were unlucky enough to click on one alone at night, you would never look at the internet the same way. The genre slowly faded as Flash died off, but its trauma still lingers in anyone who grew up at the time. And you better believe that to this day, I still use the video scrubber to check for screamers.
Quiznos Sponge Monkey commercials. In 2004, Quiznos launched a series of commercials featuring sponge monkeys, which were crudely animated things with soulless eyes, warped human faces, and high-pitched singing voices. They weren't cute, they weren't appetizing, and they screamed things like, "We love the subs," "We love the subs!" while wearing hats and floating on screen. The ads were created by animator Joel Veitch, who had initially designed the characters for a viral internet video called We Like the Moon. Quiznos licensed the characters, hoping to appeal to a younger, internet-savvy audience. Instead, they traumatized children and confused pretty much everyone else. The commercials were pulled after a few months due to negative feedback, but it was too late. Now they are only remembered as a piece of unintentional 2000s horror.
At first glance, Happy Tree Friends looks like a cute cartoon, bright colors, cuddly animals, and upbeat music. But if you watched for more than 30 seconds, you learn the hard truth. This was full-blown animated gore. Premiering in 1999 on the internet and blowing up through the 2000s, the show featured innocent-looking woodland creatures who died in the most brutal ways possible. Episodes usually started light and cheerful before spiraling into chaotic bloodbaths. The whole thing was made worse by the stark contrast. A cheerful soundtrack, cute, cuddly, kid-friendly characters that all of a sudden are getting a chainsaw to the face. A lot of kids discovered it by accident, thinking it was safe to watch, only to be scarred by exploding eyeballs and just blenders full of fur.
Coraline. Coraline hit theaters in 2009, adapted from Neil Gaiman's novel and brought to life by Leica Studios using stop-motion animation. It followed a young girl who discovers a secret door in her new home, leading to a parallel world that looks perfect at first. Her other mother cooks gourmet meals, the neighbors are fun, and everything seems better. Until it isn't. The other mother offers Coraline the opportunity to stay in the other world forever, on the condition that buttons are sewn onto her eyes. The uncanny animation and the slow shift from whimsical to terrifying hit especially hard for kids. And despite being rated PG, Coraline traumatized many younger viewers.
Fruit Gushers commercial. In the early 2000s, Fruit Gushers ran a series of bizarre commercials where children's heads would transform into giant pieces of fruit after eating the snack.
Fruity combos that are very freaky.
A kid would bite into a gusher, then instantly morph into a blueberry, a giant raspberry, or a watermelon with eyes. The ads aired constantly during kids' programming blocks, and while they were meant to be funny, the effect was unsettling. The campaign ran for years, becoming one of the most recognizable and weirdest examples of early 2000s snack food marketing. Closing logos. For some reason, closing logos in the 2000s were downright creepy sometimes. Right as you were finishing your favorite show, if you were unlucky enough to watch the credits, you'd encounter a terrifying logo animation. Klasky Csupo was the biggest offender, known for producing Rugrats and Rocket Power. Their logo featured a strange, distorted face with huge eyes and a monstrous mouth. It felt like something from a VHS tape that should have stayed lost. But there was also DNA Productions, best known for Jimmy Neutron. Their logo showed an ape with 3 eyes who would turn to the camera and say, "Hi, I'm Paul." While it was probably supposed to be harmless, it creeped out a generation of kids. To this day, comments can still be found online from people who were terrified of them as children.
Amber Alerts. Few things hit harder than an Amber Alert going off in the middle of the day. Introduced in the early 2000s, Amber Alerts were emergency notifications sent out to help locate abducted children. They could appear on TV, radio, highway signs, and eventually cell phones. But what really stuck wasn't just the message, it was the sound. You'd be watching cartoons or falling asleep when the screen would play a loud, blaring alarm. It felt like the start of something catastrophic. The alerts often gave descriptions of the child, the abductor, and a vehicle. As a kid, you didn't fully understand what was happening, you just knew that someone was in serious danger. Amber Alerts were definitely necessary, and have saved many lives, but there was something about seeing such a serious message while watching cartoons that was terrifying.
Mr. Meaty. Second only to Courage the Cowardly Dog, Mr. Meaty was one of the weirdest, most disturbing shows to ever air on a kids' network. It premiered on Nickelodeon in 2006 and followed 2 teenage slackers, Josh and Parker, who worked at a fast food joint inside of a shopping mall. But instead of serving up burgers and jokes, the show delivered body horror, grotesque puppetry, and episodes that felt more like fever dreams than comedy. The characters looked like rotting Muppets. The animation was slow and awkward, and the storylines got dark. One episode featured a tapeworm that took control of Parker's body. Despite only lasting a couple of seasons, Mr. Meaty has endured as one of Nickelodeon's strangest programs.
Was anyone else afraid of these? Head-On was an over-the-counter homeopathic headache remedy that aired its infamous commercial in the mid-2000s. The ad featured no explanation, no visuals of relief, just the same phrase repeated over and over. Head-On, apply directly to the forehead. Head-On, apply directly to the forehead. Head-On, apply directly to the forehead. While a model just awkwardly rubbed this glue stick looking thing across her forehead. That was it. They didn't really explain the benefits or the price. And this would constantly come on between cartoons. And it became a meme in the days before memes were a thing. It's not scary in the traditional sense, but there was just something so uncomfortable about how mindless and hypnotic it all felt.
Invader Zim Dark Harvest episode. Invader Zim was already a strange show, but the episode Dark Harvest took it to another level. Airing in 2001 on Nickelodeon, the episode followed Zim as he tried to appear more human by harvesting actual human organs from his classmates. He sneaks through the school, ripping out spleens, stomachs, and eyeballs, replacing his own insides with a pile of stolen anatomy. Nickelodeon did air the episode, but it didn't take long for it to spark complaints. Parents called it too violent. Some stations pulled it from rotation. And for years, Dark Harvest was seen as the show's most infamous moment. Even now, it's remembered as one of the most disturbing episodes in children's TV history. Wiggles puppets. The Wiggles were a comforting staple of early 2000s kids TV. It had bright music, catchy songs, dancing, and friendly faces. But then came the puppets. In 2006, during the Wiggles Show Season 5, the group introduced puppet versions of themselves. These weren't minor characters or background props, they were full-sized, rubber-faced versions of the Wiggles, with wide eyes and mouths that barely moved. To my knowledge, they never re-aired after their Season 5 appearance. People still talk about them, and every now and then, clips will appear online with comments full of people remembering how creepy they were.
Chain letters. Chain letters were messages that came with a threat. Forward this to 10 people, or you'll die, or something like that. Sometimes they featured a ghost who would appear in your room at 3 in the morning. At other times, they displayed grainy photos of bloody faces or cryptic warnings written in all caps. An infamous example was Carmen Winstead, a young girl who was supposedly pushed down the sewer by 5 bullies. Her tale was shared via text, with the promise that Carmen would attack those who didn't repost her story. The logic was flimsy, but the fear was real. Kids forwarded them out of pure panic, especially after reading stories of people who supposedly didn't, and quote-unquote disappeared mysteriously. These messages showed up in email boxes, comment sections, MySpace bulletins, and even YouTube comments. Most adults dismissed them as spam, but for kids navigating the internet for the first time, chain letters felt like a direct threat. You didn't know if they were real, but you weren't about to risk it. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the video, I just want to quickly shout out that I now have a community tab. It's YouTube's new feature. It's like a forum on my YouTube channel, and it's super cool. You can post about your own lost media mystery or internet mystery, or whatever you want to post there, and I'll definitely take a look at it. Yeah, it's super cool. And I also now have a Spotify page. So if you just want to listen to my videos, I'm going to be uploading them onto Spotify now, which is super cool, and I'm excited to get it up and running. So, yep, and let's get back to the video.
Before indie horror blew up on Steam, scary flash games ruled the internet and traumatized an entire generation of 2000s kids. And unlike the screamers we mentioned before, you kinda knew what you were getting into when you started playing these games. You didn't need good graphics, just a dark setting, creepy music, and the occasional jump scare. Titles like Ex Mortis and The House became legendary for their atmosphere alone. Ex Mortis, in particular, started with you waking up in the woods outside an abandoned house, then quickly descended into satanic cults, murder scenes, and demonic possession, all rendered in grainy, lo-fi horror. Then there was The House, a point-and-click ghost story set in a cursed home where every interaction triggered another chilling sound or visual. It felt like something you shouldn't be playing, which really only made it better. But a personal favorite of mine was Garfield's Scary Scavenger Hunt. I remember playing this as a kid and getting terrified at the jump scares. Yeah, jump scares in a Garfield game, in which he visits a haunted mansion collecting different types of donuts. This one is a little bit of a bait and switch, like the Screamer videos, but it really lets you know right away something's up.
Ghost videos. Before YouTube became polished and monetized, it was a goldmine for low-quality, terrifying ghost videos. Throughout the 2000s, grainy clips claiming to show real ghosts spread like wildfire. Most were filmed on VHS or early digital cameras. Security footage, abandoned buildings, or a shaky cell phone with dim lighting. A door would slam, a face would appear in the mirror, a transparent figure would glide in the background. You know the drill. One of the most infamous was the Real Demons Caught on Tape video, which appeared on YouTube in the late 2000s. And honestly, for the time, the effects were quite impressive, even if the ending is a bit cheesy. Another classic is Japanese Ghost Girl in the Mirror, featuring a young girl whose reflection stared at the viewer even after she had already turned away. Some were clearly staged, but that didn't matter, because as a kid watching at 2 in the morning, it felt real. Creepypastas. To be honest, creepypastas became popular in the 2010s, but they started in the mid to late 2000s. The term comes from copypasta, a block of text which is copied and pasted across forums. Except, instead of memes, these were horror stories. short, spooky, and often written anonymously. Early examples spread through sites like 4chan, Something Awful, and later Creepypasta.com. Some of the earliest and most iconic were Ben Drowned, the haunted Majora's Mask cartridge. There's also Jeff the Killer, which is, pretty well known at this point. Smile.jpg featuring a cursed image of a demonic dog. And of course, Slender Man, a faceless, suit-wearing figure who stalked children and appeared in photos as a blurred shadow. Most stories were obviously fake, but that didn't matter. We sure as hell believed them. For many 2000s kids, creepypastas were the gateway drug into internet horror. Obey the Walrus. Obey the Walrus was one of those early YouTube videos you were dared to watch. Uploaded in the late 2000s, the video begins with a clip of Andros from Star Fox singing a Spanish child song, before abruptly cutting to grainy footage of a thin, androgynous figure walking towards the camera within a natural gait, set to eerie, off-key music. The figure was later identified as performance artist Sandy Crisp, also known as the Goddess Bunny, who had polio as a child and went on to star in underground films. The original footage wasn't meant to be scary, but when it was re-edited with disturbing music and effects, the internet turned it into something else entirely. The way it was cut, looped, and distorted made it feel like a cursed video. It spread across YouTube and forums. Some viewers claimed it caused insomnia, nausea, or just a deep sense of dread. The myth grew quickly. People believed it was part of a larger ARG or linked with occult messages. None of that was true. But in the context of early YouTube, Obey the Walrus hit all the right buttons to stick in your brain.
Released at the turn of the century, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is one of the darkest Nintendo games ever made. Following the events of Ocarina of Time, Link finds himself in a parallel world called Termina, where the moon is falling from the sky. You have 3 days to stop the apocalypse. Fail, and everyone dies. The twist? You're stuck in a time loop. After completing a temple, you use your ocarina to reset the clock, watching the same people relive their final hours over and over again. The game is haunting. Characters expressed dread, denial, and despair. The soundtrack was eerie, the mask transformations looked painful, and the moon just by itself is nightmare fuel. Even though Ocarina of Time really is the better game overall, Majora's Mask has a special place in my heart because of its dark atmosphere and all the mystery surrounding it. Stylistically, Majora's Mask is one of a kind.
The dawn is your enemy. If you were watching Adult Swim late at night and suddenly saw a bizarre screen with the text, "The dawn is your enemy," you knew it was far past your bedtime. This bumper would play to signal the end of Adult Swim's late-night programming. It showed an ominous piece of artwork with dreary eyes, and that menacing phrase staring back at you. It felt like a warning, like you stayed up too late and weren't supposed to see what came next. It first aired in the mid-2000s, and quickly became one of Adult Swim's most infamous bumpers. Unlike their usual absurd or sarcastic interstitials, this one was completely deadpan.
I Feel Fantastic. One of the earliest and most infamous creepypasta era videos, I Feel Fantastic was uploaded to YouTube in the mid-2000s, and quickly became a viral source of unease. The video features a humanoid robot named Terra, standing stiffly in a living room. Throughout the video, she sings a distorted, auto-tuned phrase over and over. I feel fantastic, hey, hey, hey. There's no explanation, no context, just unsettling footage, and a sudden cut to an empty patch of dirt, as if someone had been buried there. That one moment launched years of speculation. Viewers started theorizing that the creator was a serial killer, and Tara wore the clothes of his victims. In reality, Tara was just an art project, but the low video quality, the robotic singing, and total lack of emotion made I Feel Fantastic one of the most disturbing and iconic videos of the early internet.
For 2000s kids with unsupervised internet access, LiveLeak was the point of no return. Launched in 2006, LiveLeak was a video sharing site known for hosting raw, uncensored videos, including violence, accidents, war zones, and real-life death. But unlike YouTube, it did not censor or blur anything. There were no age restrictions, no warnings, just the worst parts of reality, a click away. And the worst part is, you wouldn't even go there on purpose a lot of the times. Sometimes you just follow a shady link from a forum or get tricked by a "don't watch this" message, which of course you had to watch. But once you landed on a LiveLeak clip, you saw things you could not unsee. It became infamous for the watermark alone. Just seeing the words livelink.com was enough to make your stomach drop. The site defended itself as a platform for unfiltered news, but it was really just a hub for shock content. And countless kids, including myself, saw things they were not ready for, like the beheading videos are just burned into my memory. It was finally shut down in 2021.
Hand Thing. It's difficult not to make this list just a compilation of early YouTube horror, but Hand Thing by Shay St. John definitely deserves a mention. Shay St. John was a fictional character portrayed through the use of masks, wigs, prosthetic limbs, and intentionally jittery editing. Her most infamous clip, Hand Thing, featured Shay rhythmically clapping her oversized plastic hands together while whispering and laughing to herself. There's little plots, no context, just weird, unsettling audio, and a surreal, almost fever dream energy that made viewers feel like they were watching something cursed. Many assumed it was a lost experimental film, or worse, a real person spiraling. In truth, it was performance art designed to make you uncomfortable. And it worked.
Boobahs. If you thought the Teletubbies were weird, Boobahs made it look grounded. Airing from 2003 to 2006, Boobahs were a British children's show created by the same mind behind Teletubbies. It featured 5 brightly colored, blob-like creatures with glowing energy trails and dead, blinking eyes. They didn't speak, they just made squeaky, breathy noises, while floating, bouncing, and spinning in slow motion. The show was designed to encourage movement and visual stimulation for preschoolers, but for older kids who accidentally stumbled onto it, it felt like a strange fever dream.
The PlayStation 3 launched in 2006, and for some ungodly reason, Sony kicked off its marketing with one of the most disturbing commercials ever aired. Set in a stark white room, the ad features a lifeless baby doll sitting across from a PS3 console. Out of nowhere, the doll's eyes dart open. It starts laughing, then tears roll down its face. Meanwhile, the PS3 levitates while eerie sound effects play in the background. Sony said the ad was meant to be surreal and artsy, trying to position the PS3 as futuristic and mysterious. But to most people, especially kids watching late night TV, it felt more like a horror short than a product commercial.
Salad Fingers Flash Cartoon. At the dawn of the early internet, Salad Fingers was one of the first viral online horrors. Created by David Firth in 2004, the Flash cartoon followed a green character named Salad Fingers, who lived alone in a wasteland. He had a thing for rusty spoons and talked to finger puppets. The animation was crude and the tone was unsettling, and you were never quite sure what was real and what was in Salad Fingers' head. It stood out from everything else online at the time. While most Flash content was meant to be funny or random, Salad Fingers was weird, atmospheric, and psychological. New episodes have been released as recently as the 2010s, but for anyone online in the mid-2000s, the damage was already done.